Every so often, a little chaos can really shake things up, and whether it's offensive or defensive moves you're looking to tap into, there's something for everyone in the Chaos Tree. Hey there friends, it's Codiak here, welcome back to Legacy Gaming. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Chaos abilities, what they are, how to unlock them, and ultimately, if they're any good. As always, when doing a ranking video here on the channel, I like to start by making it crystal clear. This type of content, these rankings are subjective. What we think is bad or good may not be what you think is bad or good, and that's fine. We always appreciate you letting us know in the comments, and in many cases, you guys actually change our minds on a ranking, so let's just start on the same page before we dive in. Now, to do a proper rankings video, at least in our eyes, you have to establish some ground rules, something to keep us honest about how and why we're ranking things the way that we did. For our VRising series, we're keeping things relatively simple, focusing on three key areas: effectiveness in PvE, effectiveness in PvP, and utility. All of the abilities are running through that filter and hopefully allows us to more accurately characterize everything we're talking about. The goal is for us to reveal each rank and for you guys to agree, or at least be close. So with the disclaimer out of the way and the ground rules established, let's dive in to the rankings. Our first Chaos ability is Aftershock. Players smash the ground, causing a shockwave that erupts, dealing 100% magic damage in a line and inflicting Chaos Burn. To unlock Aftershock, players need to kill the V-Blood unit Errol the Stonebreaker and the Copper Mine in Farbane Woods. This is a relatively early game target within the grand scope of the game. Right out of the gate, we have an okay Chaos ability. Aftershock is a great intro into the skill tree, and its emphasis on damage first, defense later. The ability does have some strengths. It's solid in tight corridors, which makes it great when sieging or defending a castle, but it also has an AoE component, which of course is always a plus. The ability also triggers the Chaos Burn dot, which not only chips away at an enemy's health pool over time, as long as the dot is active, it keeps the enemy in combat and makes it much harder for them to heal. That's really more of a PvP angle, but that dot does provide some nice damage in PvE as well. While the ability is easy and fun to use, it's not the most impactful. Its 100% magic damage doesn't scale well in the endgame, and because of its clear telegraph, it's less than ideal in PvP, making it easy for more skilled players to avoid. That being said, it's not a bad ability, which is why Aftershock is getting a C rank. Next on our list is Chaos Barrier. When cast, players' movement speed is increased by 10%. Players also block melee and projectile attacks in front of them for 2 seconds. Blocking an attack launches a projectile towards the attacker, dealing 75% damage, pushing the target towards you, and inflicting Chaos Burn. The cooldown of the spell is 9 seconds. To unlock Chaos Barrier, players need to kill the V-Blood unit Quincy the Bandit King in central Farbane Woods. As far as defensive abilities go, Chaos Barrier pretty much takes the cake. Remember, we have to consider PvE, PvP, and utility implications, and to that end, this move gets the job done. First off, you're getting some bonus movement speed, which is good. As a barrier, it also blocks all melee and projectile attacks, and that's also good. The real magic, what makes this ability a cut above the rest, is everything else it brings to the table. First, the fact that you can reflect attacks back at an enemy for surprisingly good damage. 75% doesn't seem like much, but the damage feels impactful regardless of what the tooltip says. Chaos Barrier's ability to pull enemies closer is also a huge advantage in PvP and makes engaging that much easier, especially if you're an aggressive player. Finally, and we can't forget this, those reflected projectiles also apply Chaos Burn, which is consequential for reasons we outlined before. Top to bottom, Chaos Barrier is hands down the best defensive ability in the game using our rubric for grading, and while it does have some small limitations, things like failing to protect against AoE abilities and attacks from the sides, all barrier spells deal with the same issues. At the end of the day, the spell is great, which is why Chaos Barrier is getting an S rank. Next up, we have Chaos Volley. When cast, players launch 2 Chaos Bolts in a sequence that deal 125% magic damage and inflict Chaos Burn. To unlock Chaos Volley, players need to kill the V-Blood unit Lydia the Chaos Archer in Farbane Woods. She patrols along a set path in the eastern part of the region, so it's best to track her using the Blood Altar. Well, we've finally come to it, the best ability in VRising. Sure, that is subjective, but across the community, you'll find everyone, and I do mean pretty much everyone, rants and raves about the potency of this spell. There's a couple things to consider. First off, Chaos Volley provides great poke, allowing players to deal significant damage from mid-range. You do get 2 attacks per cast, which also sweetens the deal because it just means more damage potential. The spell has a relatively short cooldown, the projectiles inflict Chaos Burn, and Chaos Volley scales well in the endgame. PvE or PvP, it really doesn't matter. This spell is about as meta as it gets, providing incredible damage, harass potential, and utility with its dot. Sure, there's a bit of a wind-up, which is easy to spot in PvP, but because you can continue to target while winding up, it hardly matters. Chaos Volley is a stellar spell, one of the best in the game, which is why it's getting an S rank. Our next Chaos ability is Power Surge. When cast, it removes all negative effects and applies a 4-second shield on the player or chosen ally. It also shields the target for 150% of the casting player's spell power and increases the movement speed and attack speed by 25% while the shield is active. To unlock this ability, players need to kill the V-Blood unit Azariel the Sunbringer in Silverlight Hills. Whoever designed the Chaos skill tree clearly needs to tone it down a notch because once again, we have another stellar spell. While defensive in nature, you won't find a similar move in the game that even comes close to providing this much benefit across the board. You've got a powerful shield, a buff to movement and attack speed, a negative effect purge, and can't forget this, the ability to cast the spell on an ally. Power Surge checks off all the boxes and then some, and really provides top to bottom benefits for solo players, groups of players, and in both PvE and PvP. If you're not really a melee-focused player, you don't quite see as many benefits, but that hardly matters because the rest of its boons make up for that small shortcoming. If you haven't worked Power Surge into a build, I highly recommend you test it out because it's truly a one-of-a-kind ability within the game, and to that end, Power Surge is getting an S rank. Next up, we have Void. When cast, players summon an orb that explodes at the targeted location, dealing 70% magic damage and inflicting Chaos Burn. This skill comes with 2 charges, and each charge has a 9-second cooldown. Be aware, this skill also pushes enemies in whatever direction of the AoE they're standing in. Void is unlocked when players kill the V-Blood unit Morian the Stormwing Matriarch in Silverlight Hills. Void is a surprisingly good Chaos ability, one that gives players a lot of flexibility to control a fight. We do have to talk about the elephant in the room though, it's low damage, which, as you might expect, doesn't scale well in the endgame. That being said, some of the spell's other aspects do help keep it relevant longer into the game. The 2 charges offer players flexibility, and the Chaos Burn applied when hitting an enemy is good, as we've discussed a few times already. The spell also covers a sizable area, doesn't have a long ramp-up time before detonation, and just feels rather snappy for a point-and-click AoE explosion. It's a sleek spell design, but there's one thing that really disrupts the balance: the spell's knockback. It's a bit overpowering and in team play really causes some issues with combos. Even in PvE where you might be going alone, the knockback is just a bit odd for an ability that's meant to be used at range, but I'm sure skilled players can adjust and make the most of it. Void is a solid spell, one that's fun to use, and for that reason, it's getting a B rank. Moving on to our travel skill, Veil of Chaos. When cast, players dash towards a given direction and elude nearby enemies for 2.2 seconds. Players' next melee attack deals 25% bonus damage, and the spell can be recast to dash once more, spawning a second illusion. Your illusions explode, dealing 50% magic damage to all nearby enemies. To unlock Veil of Chaos, players need to kill the V-Blood unit Clive the Firestarter in the southwest corner of Farbane Woods. If it's not already clear, the Chaos skills lean heavy into damage, but there's still a ton of utility with Veil of Chaos that's worth pointing out. Unlike its illusion counterpart, when you recast the spell, you don't go back to the starting point. Instead, players get a second dash towards whatever direction they want. The range is shorter, the devs are pretty smart about that, but still, the ability to quickly juke one way then the other is powerful. The ability's 25% damage bonus also synergizes well with Rogue Blood. While we haven't really discussed Blood in our rankings, it's hard to ignore the fact that you can dash, attack, and lean into the crit effect. Veil of Chaos also comes with that additional explosive component, which can be utilized twice, and in the right scenario, provide even more damage. It's all about the deeps in this case, and while the spell doesn't have any real defensive capabilities, the offensive benefits make up for it, and then some. With all that in mind, Veil of Chaos is getting an A rank. Our first Chaos ultimate is Chaos Barrage. When cast, players launch 4 Chaos Orbs that deal 75% magic damage on direct hit, 75% magic damage to enemies in an area, and everything inflicts Chaos Burn. To unlock Chaos Barrage, players need to kill the V-Blood unit Jade the Vampire Hunter in the Dunley Farmlands. This is a patrolling enemy, so it's best to use a Blood Altar to track her location. If you like Chaos Volley, then think of Chaos Barrage as the evolution. Sadly, not all evolution is good in every situation. There's a lot to be said for its impact, for projectiles that, when on target, deal considerable damage, even if the spell scaling isn't great. The problem is, you're immobile during casting, which is a huge issue in PvP. The spell leaves you open for attack, and if you trigger it at the wrong time, you're pretty much a sitting duck. The spell is also incredibly easy to spot and avoid, which makes it a bit of a letdown when you consider our requirements for grading. What I will say though is that the spell does function well in PvE, and is a fun one to use when killing some of the endgame V-Blood units, especially if you like fighting at range. Sadly, Chaos Barrage just doesn't check off enough boxes, and the cracks in the foundation really hold it back, which is why it's getting a C rank. Our final Chaos ability is Merciless Charge. When cast, players charge forward and grab an enemy, dealing 125% magic damage, pushing them in front of the player. This deals 100% magic area damage and inflicts a stun lasting 1.5 seconds when reaching maximum range or when colliding with another enemy or object. To unlock Merciless Charge, players need to kill the V-Blood unit Quincy the Bandit King in central Farbane Woods. Merciless Charge is a really interesting ability. At first glance, it's a simple line charge attack that deals decent damage, but when you unpack it, especially considering both PvE and PvP, it becomes a lot more enticing. The real selling point is in its flexibility to reposition. Whether engaging an enemy or disengaging from a fight, Merciless Charge provides you with options. In PvE, you can use it to avoid an attack or simply deal damage. In PvP, it's much more potent, allowing you to chase a player, avoid taking damage, or even use it to peel enemies away from a fight, setting up your team for a different dynamic. What I'm getting at is that it's a flexible spell that may not sound ultimate on paper, but when you think through the application, is pretty impressive. Merciless Charge is a solid ability, which is why it's getting an A rank. I'll be honest, if we were grading each tree individually, Chaos would be the clear favorite. There are just so many spells that work well isolated or as part of builds within the tree, and that makes it leaps and bounds better than some of the less impressive skills in the game. When you think damage potential, you think Chaos, and as I mentioned before, moves like Chaos Volley are pretty much the meta. Of course, flexibility is the name of the game, and a player's skill is going to be more important than any one particular move, but if you are talking the foundational abilities that provide offensive, defensive, and utility capabilities, then look no further than the Chaos tree. We hope you guys enjoyed our rankings of the Chaos abilities in VRising. If you have any questions or want to share your rankings of the Chaos spells, you know what to do. Leave us a comment down below, and we'll do our best to get back to you. Of course, if you did like this video and you want us to continue on with our VRising series, we need your help. Hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. It's still the single best way to help channels like ours reach new audiences. If you're interested in joining our VRising private server, consider joining us on Discord. We've got a small PvP server with 2x resources set up for anyone to use. Just check out the link below and join today. Finally, if you like everything we're doing here on the channel and you want to support us even more, consider becoming a member. For just a few bucks, you're helping Livid and I achieve our dreams of becoming full-time content creators. Check out the join button below to learn more. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.